An aggregate plan is a proposal of production levels. When somebody proposes an aggregate plan to you, one quick way of assessing the consequences of that plan is charting. Charting is actually what's pretty useful in this upcoming scenario here. Let's look. Main House Gaming specializes in the sale of packaged board games for retail and educational markets. Main House assembles these games at a central facility and has, noticed this, developed a 6-month demand forecast and a potential production strategy. Oh, we have a forecast of demand over the next 6 months. And notice this with this particular scenario, we already have a plan. Somebody has proposed month by month what exactly we should do to meet this forecast. You say, oh, okay, fine. I mean, then what else is there to do in this situation? Well, if Main House Gaming uses this plan, meaning what's been proposed, what conditions will be experienced at the central assembly facility over the next 6 months? Ah, yes, charting. You can see that if you have the note frame, there is this empty graph that is all ready to go to create a very helpful illustration of the consequences of this plan. Now, how do you graph an aggregate plan? Cumulative numbers, basically. Okay, we have first off a demand forecast, correct? All right, one of the things I'm going to do for the note frame is just create some straight lines so I can keep my work neat and tidy, because I need to create some numbers for month 1, for month 2, for month 3, 4, 5, where is it? There it is, and 6. There, okay, that'll help me a little bit. Because there is 6 months worth of planning here. You say, okay, great. Now, first off, the first thing that I want to graph or illustrate is actually not the plan. It's the forecast, the demand over the next 6 months. I don't want to graph. You say, all right, well, fine, just plot these numbers, right? 10,000, 35,000, 15,000 units of sale. No, 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 don't do that. Don't plot these numbers. Make a new set of numbers. You know what? Just so my lines come out nice and straight, let's do this. Let's also extend that header right there so that I can create a new column. Cumulative demand. Now in this column, a new set of numbers. Where am I going to get the numbers? All right. In the first month, the forecast says that demand will be 10,000 units during that month. That means that by the end of that month, it's a no-brainer. Customers will have demanded 10,000 units. I want to, first off, just copy that number straight over. Now, cumulative demand, how do you calculate cumulative demand? Just think running total. For instance, starts to make more sense the next month. In the second month, the forecast actually says that during that month, there will be demand for 35,000 units. Yes, that means by the end of that month, there will have been a total of 35,000 plus 10,000, a total of 45,000 units of sale demanded, so to speak, right? This plus that, that's what this is. Now, by the end of the next month, well, during the next month, there'll be an additional 15,000 units of demand. That means by the end of that month, 45,000 plus the new 15,000 is 60,000. One way to calculate cumulative demand is to take the cumulative demand from the period before, like 60,000, plus the demand in a certain period. For the next month, it would be 65,000. Or you can just keep lengthening the list of your totals. For instance, for month 5, what's the cumulative demand? Just drop from month 5 all the way back to month 1 and add up those numbers. Oh, we're up to 70,000. And then the cumulative demand by the end of month 6. Well, in month 6, there'll be demand for, record demand, 50,000. That means at the end of that month, we are up to 120,000. Oh, great. So I have this list of numbers, the cumulative demand by the end of each one of those months. Okay, great. What am I supposed to do? Plot those numbers. Those are the numbers that we want to look at on a graph. So, okay. Right, because at the beginning of the horizon, nobody wants any units of sale, right? By the end of the first month, there will have been demand for 10,000. So that's kind of halfway between here and here, right? Now, so here's customer demand building up over the first month. Now, by the end of the second month is right here, the end of it, there will have been demand for 45,000, so that's only a little bit above the 40,000. Okay, well, I plotted that one. By the end of the third month, there will have been a total of 60,000. Oh, that's marked specifically on the axis. 60,000 units of sale. By the end of the fourth month, which would be right there, a total of 65,000 units of sale, which isn't a whole lot higher on this graph. Okay, connect. By the end of the fifth month, a total of 70,000. By the end of the sixth month, a total of 120,000. Oh, all right. There. I have this line on the graph. What is that? Well, first off, okay, just good graph habits. We should label that. What was that we actually plotted? Cumulative demand. And I'm going to just visually enhance it a little bit. We'd been using orange as the header color for demand. I'm just punching it a little bit so that it stands out. This is actually an illustration of what you're up against for the next 6 months. And if you've got a graph like this, you can learn to read the shape. Oh, you say, what do you mean read the shape? One of the things, ultimately on this note frame, it says, what are the conditions they're facing over the next 6 months? So we are going to have to comment on that. When you're looking at a cumulative demand curve, anywhere, imagine yourself sort of taking a hike along this terrain. Anywhere that the hike is fairly easygoing, the line is fairly flat, these are quiet months for demand. Right in here. You say, well, yeah, I could see that because I'm just looking, there's a 5,000 and a 5,000. These seem to be low demand months. True. I mean, you can see that here. You can see that just by glancing at the graph. Anywhere that it gets steep, like, oh, that would be a hard climb, like right in there, that is indicating a spike in demand. That is indicating suddenly an intensely busy period. Oh, all right. Now, I had said that this thing called charting, like we just did, this is a good way to quickly assess the consequences of using some particular plan. Well, how so? Because we're only looking at demand. We're only looking at demand right now. Now that we have drawn the cumulative demand curve, next step, draw the plan. Same thing. Cumulative production. This is a chase demand plan. Notice that the levels fluctuate. They seem to be mimicking, although not exactly, the forecast for demand. At any rate, what do we want to do? Same thing we did over here. We want to take these numbers, the actual proposed plan, and convert them to a running total. So we planned to make 10,000 units of sale in the first month. That means if we're following that plan, we will have made a total of 10,000 units of sale by the end of that month. Duh. Okay, but we're planning on making 40,000 units of sale in the second month, which means that by the end of the second month, we will have completed a total of 50,000, 40,000 plus the 10,000. Then by the end of the third month, 10,000 plus the 40,000 plus the 10,000, we'll be up to 60,000 units of sale produced. Okay, in the fourth month we'll make another 10,000, which means by the end of the fourth month we'll have made a total of 70,000 units. This plan proposes that we shut down and take a vacation in the fifth month because this is 0 for production, which means that by the end of that month we're still holding at a total of 70,000 units produced. Then all of a sudden we're going to turn around and in the last month we're going to produce a record amount. It says 50,000. Okay, which means 70,000 plus 50,000. By the end of this plan we will have produced a total of 120,000. Oh, and I think I kind of see some of the logic of the plan, because notice that the 120,000 that we will produce by the end of the plan is the same thing as the total amount that will be demanded by the end of that same time period, the 120,000. Oh, okay. Why did we generate that list of numbers? We want to plot them. We want to do the same thing here. Let's plot our production activity if we follow this plan. Starting with nothing, we will make a total of 10,000 by the end of the first month. Then, by the end of the second month, we're going to pick up the pace and produce a total of 50,000, which is really just above where we had been drawing previously. Okay, well, I can do that. Connect those two lines right there. That's good. And then by the end of the third month, we'll have made a total of 60,000, which is actually that same point that we plotted last time. Okay, so nonetheless, I can use it again, plot that. Then by the end of the fourth month, a total of 70,000, so we are right in here. Again, kind of just barely above that demand point we plotted last time. Then we don't plan to do anything during the fifth month, so we will still have produced a total of 70,000 by the end of that month, which means that on this graph we have flatlined during that month. We're not doing anything. But then by the end of the sixth month, we're going to swing into action, make another 50,000, which is going to lift the cumulative demand total up to 120,000, which means that that line, that steep slope, is exactly the same as the cumulative demand curve itself. This is, in green, although you can hardly tell the difference, cumulative production. All right. And this was a means of assessing that plan so that we could make some smart commentary on what the conditions will be over the next 6 months. Yes, actually, one of the things, see, I'm picking a contrasting color of ink, that I'm interested in is these gaps, and they're not very big. There's a gap in here between the two curves that I drew, right in here and right in here. That gap has meaning. That is where cumulative production, it's just briefly at the end of the second month and at the end of the fourth month, cumulative production is above cumulative demand. You are looking at inventory. That's what inventory looks like on this kind of graph. Oh, well, those aren't very significant gaps. I mean, they're just little slivers. Yes, one of the things that we can comment on concerning the conditions over the next 6 months is that if we follow this particular plan, we're not going to accumulate very much inventory. You see only very tiny, tiny little slivers, which is generally a characteristic of a so-called chase demand plan. If you're always changing your production levels to mimic changes in demand, you don't generally tend to accumulate a lot of extra stuff at certain points in time. But anyway, another feature though that I notice is we are supposedly, if we follow this plan, going to shut down at one point and turn around and produce record amounts the next month. Now there's nothing that says we can't do that, but you know, if we're going to comment on what conditions will be experienced, that's pretty prominent. Oh, anyway, so maybe just to finish this out, I ought to make some comments such that they were asking, you know, based on this graph. Okay, well, Main House Gaming, I'm just going to abbreviate it. Their production will vary from nothing to 50,000 units a month. Okay, that's just like a lot of variation. However, they will accumulate, that's what I'm trying to write. They will accumulate very little inventory. And if I wanted to be more specific, I could actually cite when they would be accumulating that inventory. I would just simply look at my graph and say, oh yes, for instance, at the end of the second month and at the end of the fourth month.